Where focus goes, success grows. This is not a slogan, it is a law of life. Whatever you give your attention to begins to expand. Whatever you return your mind to again and again begins to shape your reality. Focus is the invisible force that decides whether your energy creates momentum or disappears into distraction. Every great transformation begins the moment you decide what truly deserves your attention and what no longer does. Most people do not fail because they lack ability. They fail because their focus is scattered. They give a little energy to everything and full commitment to nothing. They allow noise to dominate their thinking. They allow fear to compete with vision. They allow comfort to overpower growth. And slowly, quietly, the future they wanted begins to drift further away. Not because it was impossible, but because it was never fully focused on. Your focus is your power source. When it is divided, your results are weak. When it is concentrated, your progress becomes unstoppable. You don't need more time. You don't need more chances. You don't need a perfect situation. What you need is directed attention, one clear target, one defined direction, one daily commitment to show up with intention. When your mind locks onto progress, your actions naturally follow. Success never grows in chaos, it grows in clarity. The clearer you become about what you want, the stronger your actions become. Confusion weakens effort, clarity multiplies it. When your focus is sharp, your decisions become faster. Your doubt becomes quieter. Your confidence becomes stronger. You stop hesitating and you start moving. Distraction is the silent enemy of greatness. It does not attack loudly. It whispers. It tempts. It delays. It convinces you that tomorrow is safer than today. But every delayed action weakens the habit of execution. Every broken focus weakens momentum. And momentum is everything. Once momentum is lost, rebuilding it takes far more energy than protecting it ever did. Where focus goes, success grows because success is built from repetition. What you think about daily, you practice unconsciously. What you practice unconsciously, you become. If your focus stays on excuses, struggle grows. If your focus stays on discipline, strength grows. If your focus stays on fear, limitation grows. If your focus stays on solutions, results grow. You become evidence of whatever you focus on most. Focus does not remove obstacles, but it gives you the strength to move through them. Focus does not erase fear, but it gives you something stronger than fear to live for. Focus does not make the journey easy, but it makes the path clear. And clarity creates courage. Every breakthrough comes after a season of deep focus. Long before results show up on the outside, clarity forms on the inside. Discipline is built in silence. Confidence is built in repetition. Strength is built when you choose to stay locked in, even when progress feels slow. Growth is rarely loud, but it is always working when focus is protected. You cannot control everything that happens around you, but you can control what you feed your mind. You can choose what information you absorb. You can choose what standards you live by. You can choose what you tolerate from yourself. These small daily focus decisions build the difference between regret and pride, between potential and performance, between dreaming and becoming. The future will never ask how busy you were. It will only reveal what your focus created. Busyness without focus is exhaustion. Focus without distraction is power. Choose power. Choose direction. Choose to stop giving your best energy to meaningless noise while your greatest goals wait in silence. When your focus becomes stable, your emotions become manageable. When your thoughts become intentional, your actions become reliable. When your habits become disciplined, your future becomes predictable. Predictable not in limitation, but in growth, because growth is always the result of consistent focus. You don't rise to the size of your dreams. You sink to the level of your daily focus. If your focus is shallow, your results will be shallow. If your focus is deep, your success will be deep. If your focus is temporary, your wins will be temporary. If your focus is persistent, your success will last. Today is not about doing everything. Today is about doing the one thing that moves your life forward. Tomorrow will be shaped by what you choose to focus on today. Every moment of discipline strengthens the version of you that refuses to quit. Every moment of focus builds the future that once felt distant. Where focus goes, success grows, always. Not sometimes, not when conditions are perfect, always. Protect your attention, guard your energy, lock onto your purpose, and watch how the disciplined direction of your mind begins to reshape your life from the inside out. Focused attention determines the direction and speed of your success, because whatever you consistently give your mind to begins to shape your actions, your habits, and eventually your destiny. Success does not move randomly through life, it follows direction, and direction is always set by attention. When your focus is clear, your energy becomes powerful. When your focus is scattered, your effort becomes diluted. You may be busy, you may be exhausted, you may even feel productive, but without focused attention. Your movement can still lead nowhere. Every day, your attention is making choices even before you are fully aware of them. It decides what matters and what doesn't. It decides what you act on and what you ignore. It decides whether you move forward with purpose or drift with distraction. Focus is the steering wheel of life. If you don't hold it intentionally, something else will grab it for you. Fear, comfort, doubt, comparison, or noise. And once that happens, your speed slows, your direction shifts, and your potential begins to leak away. Focused attention creates acceleration. When your mind is locked onto a clear goal, your actions become sharper, your decisions become faster, your effort becomes more efficient. You stop wasting energy on unnecessary battles, you stop chasing everything and begin building something. Speed is not created by rushing. Speed is created by clarity. A clear mind moves faster than a confused one. A focused direction beats frantic effort every time. Distraction does not always look like laziness. Sometimes it looks like being busy with the wrong things. Sometimes it looks like constant planning without execution. Sometimes it looks like waiting for perfect timing. Sometimes it looks like overthinking instead of acting. All of this slows the speed of success because attention is being spent instead of invested. Focus is an investment. Wherever you place it, growth begins. When attention is focused, resistance loses its power. Challenges still appear, but they don't stop motion. Doubt still whispers, but it doesn't paralyze action. Fatigue still arrives, but it doesn't break commitment. That is the power of directional focus. It does not remove difficulty. It gives difficulty a target to move through. Without focus, difficulty feels heavier. With focus, difficulty feels temporary. Success accelerates when you stop spreading your energy thin and start compressing it toward one meaningful direction. Scattered attention produces scattered results. Concentrated attention produces momentum. Momentum is what turns effort into progress and progress into results. Once momentum is built, you no longer have to force movement, it begins to carry you. And that momentum is born from focused attention repeated consistently. Your speed is always connected to how clear your priorities are. When everything feels important, nothing moves fast. When one thing becomes truly important, everything else falls into alignment. Focus simplifies, it cuts through confusion, it removes unnecessary weight. It frees up energy that was being wasted on overthinking, hesitation, and second-guessing. The lighter your mental load, the faster you move. Direction is not set by intention alone, but by daily focus. You can say you want change, growth, success, and breakthroughs, but your attention reveals your truth. Where your mind goes most often, your life is already following. If attention is stuck on excuses, your direction bends toward stagnation. If attention is locked on solutions, your direction bends toward progress. Life always follows the mind. Focused attention also sharpens discipline. When your direction is clear, discipline becomes easier. You don't wrestle with every decision. You don't negotiate with distraction constantly. You simply execute. Confused minds debate. Focused minds act. Action compounds. And compounded action becomes speed in the form of progress. There is also a deep emotional strength that comes from focused living. Anxiety often comes from divided attention, thinking about too many possibilities at once, worrying about outcomes that haven't happened, and carrying responsibilities that don't belong to the present moment. Focus pulls your energy back into now. It grounds you. It stabilizes you. It allows you to move with confidence instead of panic. Speed does not always mean fast results. It means fast alignment. It means reduced delay between decision and action. It means fewer wasted days. It means less time lost to distraction, doubt, and inconsistency. Success may still take time, but focused attention ensures that time is used effectively rather than wasted. Every major improvement in life begins with a shift in focus. Not a shift in circumstances, not a shift in luck, a shift in attention. The moment you decide what truly deserves your energy, your direction locks in. The moment your direction locks in, your speed increases. And once speed increases, results become a matter of persistence rather than possibility. The world will always try to claim your attention. Noise is endless. Distraction is limitless. Comfort is seductive. Comparison is loud. Fear is persuasive. But none of these get to control your direction unless you give them your focus. You cannot stop distractions from existing, but you can stop them from leading you. Protected focus creates protected progress. Focused attention also creates identity. You become what you repeatedly pay attention to. If you focus on growth, you become growth-oriented. If you focus on discipline, you become disciplined. If you focus on struggle, you become trapped in struggle. Identity is not formed through motivation. It is formed through attention reinforced by action. When focus becomes a habit, success becomes predictable. Not because life becomes easy, but because your response becomes consistent. You show up even when it's uncomfortable. You act even when it's inconvenient. You stay aligned even when it's difficult. That consistency multiplied by focus creates unstoppable forward motion. Focused attention determines the direction and speed of your success because your life can only expand in the DI. Direction your mind repeatedly travels. Choose that direction deliberately. Protect it fiercely and understand that every moment you stay focused, you are quietly accelerating toward the future you are building. What you repeatedly focus on expands into your habits, results in reality, because your mind is not just a place where thoughts pass through. It is the workshop where your life is being built every single day. Every repeated thought strengthens a pathway. Every repeated image becomes familiar. Every repeated belief starts to feel true. And what feels true eventually becomes what you live out. Focus is not passive. It is creative. It is shaping something whether you are aware of it or not. Your habits are born from repetition of attention before they ever appear as action. Long before behavior becomes visible, focus has already decided its direction. If your mind constantly returns to comfort, your habits become comfortable. If your mind constantly returns to discipline, your habits become disciplined. If your mind constantly returns to fear, your habits become cautious and limited. The body follows the most familiar command the mind has practiced. That is why change feels hard at first, because you are trying to override years of mental repetition with a new direction. Results do not appear suddenly. They grow quietly out of repeated focus. Small daily choices may not feel powerful in the moment, but they are stacking outcomes behind the scenes. One focused thought leads to one aligned action. One aligned action repeated becomes a pattern. One pattern sustained becomes a habit. One habit practiced over time becomes a result, and eventually those results form the reality you live inside of. Nothing appears from nowhere. Everything is trained into existence through repetition. Reality itself becomes a mirror of long-term focus, not of your wishes, not of your hopes, not of your temporary emotions. Reality reflects what you have consistently rehearsed with your attention. If your focus lives in limitation, life begins to feel limited. If your focus lives in growth, life begins to expand. If your focus lives in problems, problems increase. If your focus lives in solutions, solutions start appearing everywhere. This is why guarding your focus is more than motivation. It is survival for your future. You cannot afford to repeatedly feed your mind with doubt and expect confidence to grow. You cannot afford to repeatedly feed your mind with excuses and expect discipline to appear. You cannot afford to repeatedly focus on comfort and expect strength to develop. The mind grows what it is fed, and it feeds on repetition. Many people live in cycles they don't understand because they never question what they repeatedly focus on. They focus on the same fears, the same worries, the same comparisons, the same regrets. And then they wonder why their life feels stagnant, heavy, or limited. It is not because change is impossible. It is because attention is loyal to the past, and what you repeatedly return to, you repeatedly recreate. Your focus also shapes your emotional patterns. Emotions are not random, they are responses to what the mind is holding on to. When your focus stays on loss, sadness grows. When your focus stays on danger, anxiety grows. When your focus stays on possibility, excitement grows. When your focus stays on progress, confidence grows. The emotional world you live in is largely constructed by what your attention revisits most often. Over time, these emotions influence your behavior. Behavior influences your environment, and your environment reinforces your original focus. That is how cycles are formed. Focus creates emotion. Emotion drives action. Action produces results. Results strengthen belief. Belief redirects focus, and the loop continues. Whether that loop lifts you or limits you depends on where your attention is trained to live. Even your sense of identity is built through repeated focus. You become what you repeatedly tell yourself you are. You become what you repeatedly imagine being. If your focus is locked onto your flaws, you begin to live as flawed. If your focus is locked onto your strength, you begin to live as strong. Identity is not fixed, it is rehearsed, and whatever you practice internally becomes what you perform externally. This is why a single moment of motivation cannot compete with years of repeated attention. A burst of desire cannot overpower a lifetime of mental conditioning. Real transformation happens when you change what you repeatedly focus on, not just what you temporarily feel. The mind does not respond to intensity as much as it responds to consistency. Your reality today is not proof of your limits. It is proof of what your attention has been trained to dwell on so far, and that means your future can change the moment your focus changes, not overnight, not instantly, but inevitably, because repetition always wins. When you deliberately train your focus toward growth, your habits begin to shift without force. You begin choosing differently without constant struggle. You begin responding differently under pressure. You begin seeing opportunities where you once only saw obstacles, not because the world suddenly changed, but because your focus did. What you focus on also determines what you ignore, and what you ignore slowly disappears from your life. When your focus shifts to discipline, excuses lose power. When your focus shifts to progress, delays lose their emotional grip. When your focus shifts to purpose, distractions lose their appeal. Attention has the power to starve what you no longer want to feed. The danger is not focusing on the wrong things once. The danger is focusing on the wrong things repeatedly. One negative thought will not define you. One distracted day will not destroy you. But repeated focus becomes structure. It becomes automatic. It becomes identity. And by the time you notice it, it may already feel like just who you are, when in reality it is simply who you have practiced being. Change begins when you become conscious of what you repeatedly return to in your mind. Not what happens once in a while, but what happens every day. The casual thoughts, the background worries, the silent assumptions, the inner conversations that never stop. These are the real architects of your future. What you repeatedly focus on expands into your habits, results, and reality, whether you choose it intentionally or not. The difference between drifting and designing your life is awareness. When you choose your focus deliberately, you choose your direction deliberately, and when you choose your direction deliberately, your reality eventually has no choice but to follow. Distraction weakens momentum while clarity multiplies progress, because momentum is built from continuous aligned movement, not from scattered effort. Momentum is fragile in its early stages. It requires protection, consistency, and repeat direction. The moment distraction enters, that steady movement breaks. Energy leaks, focus fractures, and progress that was once flowing begins to stall. Clarity, on the other hand, compresses energy into one direction, turning small efforts into amplified results. Momentum is not just physical movement, it is emotional, mental, and behavioral alignment. When your mind is clear, your actions become stable. When your actions are stable, your confidence grows. When confidence grows, you move faster. This chain only works when clarity is present. The second your focus becomes cluttered with too many else, too many fears, too many comparisons, or too many options, momentum weakens. You hesitate, you overthink, you slow down, and delay quietly replaces progress. Distraction rarely arrives as chaos in the beginning. It often enters disguised as harmless delay, unnecessary planning, constant checking, endless scrolling, or trying to pursue too many goals at once. Each distraction on its own seems small, but together they fragment your energy. When energy is fragmented, it loses force. When force disappears, momentum fades. Clarity simplifies. It removes excess mental noise. It collapses choices. It defines what matters right now. And when the mind knows what matters most, it stops negotiating with distractions. Decision fatigue disappears. Hesitation weakens. Execution strengthens. That is why clear people move faster, not because their lives are easier, but because their priorities are sharper. Distraction also weakens emotional strength. When you constantly shift attention, your nervous system never stabilizes. You feel overwhelmed even when your workload is light. You feel rushed even when nothing is urgent. You feel tired even when you haven't truly worked deeply. This exhaustion comes not from effort, but from scattering the mind across too many directions at once. Clarity restores emotional efficiency. You stop bleeding energy into irrelevant things. You conserve strength. You move with control. Progress multiplies when clarity becomes habitual. When clarity is present, even hard work feels lighter. When clarity is present, challenges no longer feel like threats, they feel like tasks. When clarity is present, fear becomes information instead of an obstacle. The mind interprets difficulty differently when it understands the purpose behind the struggle. Momentum grows through repeated aligned action. Aligned action requires knowing exactly what you are building and why you are building it. Distraction breaks alignment by constantly shifting the mind's target. One day the focus is strength. The next day the focus is comfort. One day the focus is discipline. The next day the focus is escape. With no consistent direction, there can be no sustained momentum. Clarity also protects motivation from emotional swings. When you don't know exactly why you're doing something, motivation becomes fragile. It rises when you feel good and collapses when you feel tired. But when clarity is strong, Motivation becomes less necessary. You work because you are rooted in purpose, not because you are chasing a feeling. Progress then becomes steady instead of emotional. Distraction creates the illusion of movement without creating real progress. You may feel busy, you may feel occupied, you may even feel productive, but without clarity, activity can be empty. Movement without direction only creates exhaustion, not achievement. Clarity turns movement into advancement. Over time, distraction also damages self-trust. Each time you delay what you said you would do, a small fracture forms in your confidence. Each time you abandon focus for comfort, discipline weakens. Each time you allow noise to override intention, the mind learns that distractions are stronger than commitments. Clarity repairs self-trust by creating small, consistent wins. Each completed action strengthens belief. Each aligned decision restores confidence. Progress multiplies not when you do everything, but when you do the right thing repeatedly. Clarity tells you what the right thing is. Without it, you guess. With it, you move decisively. The faster your decisions become, the faster your progress compounds. Speed is built on certainty. Certainty is built on clarity. Distraction also slows learning. When attention is divided, retention weakens. Skills take longer to build. Understanding becomes shallow. Depth disappears. Clarity allows depth, and depth creates mastery. Mastery then accelerates success because you no longer rely on trial and error for everything. You operate from skill. Clarity is not something you find. It is something you create through decision. You decide what matters most. You decide what deserves your attention. You decide what your standard is. And once that decision is repeated daily, clarity becomes automatic. At that point, distractions no longer feel tempting. They feel irrelevant. The danger of distraction is not only in what it steals from today, but in what it delays for tomorrow. Every day of unfocused effort pushes your future further away. Every day of clarity pulls it closer. The distance between where you are and where you want to be is shortened not by intensity, but by precision. Distraction drains momentum because it breaks the rhythm of progress. Clarity multiplies progress because it strengthens rhythm, and rhythm is everything. When effort becomes rhythmic, discipline becomes natural. When discipline becomes natural, growth becomes consistent. And when growth becomes consistent, success becomes inevitable. Distraction weakens momentum because it divides the mind. Clarity multiplies progress because it unifies the mind. And when the mind is unified behind a clear purpose, the speed of transformation increases beyond what scattered effort could ever achieve. Consistency and focus builds confidence, discipline, and long-term achievement because focus is not a one-time decision. It is a daily practice. Anyone can feel focused for a moment when motivation is high or excitement is fresh. But true transformation happens when focus becomes stable, repeatable, and reliable. When you return your attention to the same purpose again and again, especially on the days when you don't feel like it, you begin to change. From the inside out, confidence is built through proof, not positive thinking. And the strongest proof you can give yourself is showing up with focus, even when emotions fluctuate. Each time you choose to stay locked on your purpose, despite distraction, fatigue, or doubt, you send a powerful message to your mind: you can be trusted. That trust compounds. It grows quietly. One focused day becomes two becomes a week becomes a month, and soon, confidence is no longer something you chase, it becomes something you carry. Inconsistent focus weakens self-belief because it creates broken promises with yourself. You start strong, then fade, you feel determined, then distracted. Over time, the mind learns to doubt your own commitments. But consistent focus heals that fracture. Every time you follow through, even in small ways, you rebuild internal integrity. You become someone who does what they said they would do. That identity is the foundation of unshakable confidence. Discipline is not created through force, it is created through repetition. Each time you redirect your attention back to what matters, you strengthen mental control. Each time you resist distraction, you train self-command. Discipline is simply the ability to stay aligned with what matters most, regardless of how you feel in the moment. That ability grows stronger with every consistent choice to focus. A disciplined mind is not rigid, it is reliable. It doesn't depend on mood. It doesn't negotiate with excuses. It doesn't wait for perfect conditions. It acts from alignment, not emotion. Consistency and focus trains the mind to operate from commitment rather than convenience. Long-term achievement is not built from dramatic bursts of intensity. It is built from steady, focused effort applied over time. Achievement grows the way a tree grows, slowly, invisibly, and continuously. You don't see progress every day, but the roots are expanding. And those roots are built by consistency, not inspiration. Many people overestimate what they can do in one burst and underestimate what they can build through steady focus. When focus is consistent, learning becomes deeper, skills develop faster, mistakes turn into feedback instead of failure, improvement becomes automatic rather than forced. Progress stops feeling fragile and starts feeling inevitable. Consistency and focus also creates emotional stability. When your attention jumps constantly between fear, comparison, pressure, and distraction, your emotional state becomes unpredictable. One day you feel energized, the next day you feel lost, one moment you feel confident, the next moment you feel doubtful. But when your focus stays anchored to growth, progress, and purpose, your emotions become steadier. You still feel discomfort, but it no longer controls your direction. This steadiness is what allows long-term goals to survive short-term discomfort. Without consistent focus, long-term goals are easily abandoned because short-term emotions become louder than long-term vision. But when focus is trained, vision stays stronger than impulse. You stop asking, "How do I feel today?" and start asking, "What does my future require from me today?" Confidence grows when you see yourself remain focused under pressure. Discipline grows when you remain focused under temptation. Achievement grows when you remain focused under uncertainty. These three qualities are not separate. They are built together through the same daily act of returning your attention to what matters. Consistency and focus also sharpens decision-making. When your mind knows what it stands for, choices become simpler. You waste less energy debating. You hesitate less. You second-guess less. Focus becomes your filter. Anything that does not serve your direction begins to feel heavy instead of tempting. You stop chasing everything and start building something. Over time, this creates leverage. Small, focused actions repeated daily begin to compound. Results slowly appear. Growth becomes measurable. Confidence rises not from hype but from visible progress. Discipline becomes less exhausting because it has momentum behind it. And achievement stops feeling distant because you are actively moving toward it every day. Consistency also protects you from burnout. Burnout often comes not from doing too much of what matters, but from doing too much of what doesn't matter. When focus is inconsistent, energy is wasted on irrelevant effort. When focus is consistent, energy is applied efficiently. You rest with intention. You work with direction. You no longer feel pulled in 100 directions at once. Long-term achievement requires the ability to endure boredom, repetition, and delayed rewards. Consistency in focus trains you to tolerate the quiet phases of growth, the phases where there is effort but little recognition, movement but little feedback, work but little reward. These phases are not failures. They are the exact conditions under which mastery is built. The people who reach lasting success are rarely the ones who burn brightest at the beginning. They are the ones who stayed focused the longest. They kept going when the excitement faded. They refined when others quit. They repeated what worked instead of constantly chasing what was new. Consistency and focus also creates resilience. When setbacks come, you do not collapse emotionally because your attention is anchored. You adapt, you adjust, you continue. Focus turns obstacles into tasks instead of threats. It trains the mind to see difficulty as part of the process rather than a signal to stop. Over time, this consistency transforms your identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who tries. You start seeing yourself as someone who builds. You stop needing external pressure to act because internal alignment is already driving you. Achievement then becomes a reflection of who you are, not just what you do. Consistency in focus builds confidence because you trust yourself. It builds discipline because you train yourself. It builds long-term achievement because you outlast short-term emotion. And in the end, what separates those who dream from those who build is not intensity, talent, or luck. It is the quiet, powerful ability to stay focused again and again, day after day, when no one is watching and nothing feels dramatic.